Hey there everyone, and welcome to another tutorial. This time we'll be looking at xGen and how to use already existing topology to create your grooms. Before we get started, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping, and we'll start off with welcome everyone, and welcome to all my new subscribers. Thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to see that my tutorials are helpful to all of you. If you have any suggestions for tutorials that you would like to see, or you have some technical difficulty and you want to know how to deal with it, I will gladly answer your questions. Just leave a comment below and we'll take it from there. I would also like to thank you, Andrew Dwyer, for providing this lovely model. He modeled this as part of his final film, and he gladly donated it for this tutorial so I can teach you all how to do this very nice little method of grooming your characters. This tutorial is intermediate level for those who are learning xGen. It's not kind of starter tutorial in xGen, mainly because there are other videos out there that will probably explain it better than I will ever. And for more advanced stuff, if you guys are interested in that, I can try and help you out. But this tutorial is more about like what to look out for and how to set up your workflow as you go along with your xGen projects. So with that being said, let's just jump into it and get started. Alright, so several weeks ago, my student Andrew Dwyer was working on his character, and then he said, well, you know, I modeled this hair and I textured it very nicely, but it just doesn't look as nice as I'd like it. What options are there for me to create hair? So we spoke about the different options that he has, and then he asked me, well, what about xGen? I'll say, well, xGen's a great tool. So let me look into it and see how we can take the current model that you have and make it into an xGen Groom. So after a bit of research on the internet, I found at least one or two different techniques, and out of the two, I kind of like the specific one, but it didn't have any voiceover. It was just like a speed up version of how somebody solved the problem. And I think I'll share it with you with a few little changes that I've made to make it better. Alright, so now that we've done with all the introductions, let's just jump into what we need to set up for an xGen. So xGen is very particular on how it maintains its data. And the most important thing for you guys to learn is that when you build an xGen, is to keep your pipeline nice and clean. So if you look right up here at my top bar, you can see right now it's this project is set to my desktop, and you'll see that none of the names have any weird signs or numbers or anything other than the file number, and it only used underscores. Now this is very important because xGen will have issues reloading and updating its files unless you keep your files nice and clean. That means your project has to be set properly. So for some reason stuff is not working. There we go. So you go to set project, and now it's going to ask me where I want to go, so I'm just going to go to xGen head and set. Actually, you guys didn't see that because it was off screen, so let me just do that again. So there we go. And then I'm going to go to there, and set. So now that my scene is set, I know the minute I'm going to save, it's going to do all the connections that xGen needs to do and will have its correct path. Now, let's make this very clear. This has to be done as soon as possible. Otherwise, xGen will just not work correctly and you'll get all kind of weirdness, especially when you get to render. So don't spend a whole day working on something and then crying your eyes out because RenderMan can't find a file. Alright, so once we've done with that, we want to see how to approach this. When we create any kind of groom in 3D software, basically what we want to do is have what they call guide curves. And the guide curves are basically little tiny, it's a group of, let's say, a couple of hundred hairs that will follow a single curve. Now, why do we do this? We do this because we cannot simulate or paint and work on each curve, each hair separately, because it gets very heavy and complex. But instead, we can actually put groups of hair and work on them as one. And that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is going to look at our sculpt here and create those guide curves prior to connecting up. Now, before I wrap up this section, I would like to say that this is not like a full introduction into xGen. If you want to learn about that, go to Maya Learning on YouTube. They got a very extensive explanation on xGen. It's a bit outdated, but you can get the idea how it works. And yeah, so head out there, and when you're ready, come back, and then some of this stuff will make sense. Well, see you soon. Alright, so to get things started, what we're going to do is look at the design of the hair here and try to understand exactly how the hair is flowing and what exactly must we do to kind of get this nice effect, to have like a hair growing on the sides. So if you look, you can see like we got these ridges that were drawn in, and this is basically due to clumping in hair. You get these types of ridges, and this is basically where I want to add in that data, those curves that I want. Now, to do this, I could go and make this a live object and then start just clicking on it with the modifier, with the CV tool. But instead, I'm actually going to use a different tool in Maya. This tool will be found under the modeling, general, and it's called Paint Effects. Now, if you guys haven't messed around with Paint Effects yet, there are several videos, and if you're interested, I can create a nice video about Paint Effects itself. But Paint Effects is Maya's procedural way of creating basically anything from oil brush strokes to trees and flowers and shrubbery. It's very powerful if you know how to use it. It's a bit outdated to what there is out there today, but we could still use it, and it's still even used in film today. Alright, so first thing I want to do is choose the hair and go to General and make paintable. Now what this will do is kind of make sure that when I drag a stroke along here, Maya will basically snap that stroke to the object that I'm using. Alright, so let's just do that. I'm actually going to take my stylus and use my stylus for this because it's just going to make things easier. Alright, here we go. Next step, I'm going to go to here and Paint Effects, and I get this lovely little pen, and just start and drag from the bottom up. Doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to fix this later. Let's take another one from about there. Yep, and another one from there. Now I don't need to draw a lot of these. I'm first going to start off where there's clumping. And this will just because if I do too many of these, I kind of lose control later when we have to kind of deal with these. And if we have like hundreds and hundreds of hairs, this becomes quite a tedious task. So I'm just going to do this. And again, I'm more or less just following already what I have. Actually, I don't like that stroke. Let's see. So he's got sort of a comb over. Let's go from here for now. Now these don't have to be perfect, but you always want to start your curve more or less where it's going to connect. I don't like those. I'm just doing a few undos. So this will take a little bit of time, and in this case I'm just gonna do it that way. Alright, I'm gonna pause the video, and when I'm done you can follow. Alright, I'm done. So this is what I have, and basically, it should be more or less what I'm looking for. I'll probably stop the video here, and when we come back, I'll do a few little changes, but nothing too drastic. And then we'll go on to the next stage. Alright, we're back. So here I got these strokes. I just added a few more. It's okay if they overlap, because that's how hair is, and we'll probably add some more of these later. But again, I try not to have too many, because otherwise this becomes really time consuming. But yeah, it should be good by now. Also, don't worry about, you know, like jaggedness and stuff. This is all stuff that we are gonna fix later. Alright, so the next step is to take these strokes and actually turn them into from brush strokes into curves. I'm going to just grab all of these and I'm going to put them in a group for now. And I'm going to go to Modify, because I want to modify these under Curves, Paint Effects to Curves. Let's just open the options. Yep, that seems fine. It's going to create all of these. Whoops. It's going to create all of these curves. Alright, so now I could get rid of the strokes. I will leave only the curves. In this case, I'm going to start turning stuff off and just stay with the curves. Alright, like that. Grab all of these and group them. Alright. Grab them again, go delete history, so there's no connection. And we can pretty much delete all of these. Should I group these? No. There we go. Group them. Delete the history. We can now just get rid of all of these extra groups. So we left with just one group, and we should name it. So this will be here. My microphone's in front of this. Here. In front of my keyboard, so I can't see what I'm doing. Here. There we go. So these are going to be my hair curves. Alright. Now, technically, this looks pretty good, but if we look at the vertices of these, you can see I got hundreds and hundreds of vertices running along these guys. And this is going to be really hard to control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these guys and rebuild them with a lot less curves. So under modeling, we're going to go to curves and rebuild curves. We're going to open the options, I'm just going to reset this here. So by default it's 4. You could leave it at 4. Let's just see the result. So I'm going to do that. And you'll see immediately like the curves clean up a bit, then become less chunky, and then you get something like that. Alright. I sometimes knock it down to 2, but that's fine. Alright, so we're happy with this. And great. Next step is to now create what we call the hair cap. Instead of throwing an xGen node on the whole thing, we're just going to put in, create a geometry that's going to be the sculpt. So I'm going to show you 2 techniques on how to deal with that, and then we'll come back when it's all done. So in the next segment, we'll look at that. Alright, so welcome back. We left off where we created the curves. Before we move on to anything else, what I need to do is kind of create a head cap. So what is that? Show the finished result. Let's just hide everything. There we go. It's something like this. This is where the hair is actually going to grow out of. Now, why do we create a separate cap? As I mentioned in the previous section, if we throw hair on the whole geometry, it becomes really hard to manage, because then we have to paint out areas that we don't want to have hair. But instead, what we can do is just create this geometry cap, and it will automatically grow from here, and then we can say, well, don't go all the way to the edge, or just control it from there. Alright, so how do you create such a cap? Well, it's fairly simple. So there's 2 ways to go about it. The first way, what you do is you take your, you go into faces and you go to your paint selection tool, and mine is set really big, so I'm gonna just knock that down. Oh, there we go. And if I double click on it, I should get the options and stroke, and we'll put reflection, and then I can start selecting. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me turn off. Yep. Let's turn off the colors. There you go. So you can see I can fairly easy just paint in the areas I want, and then what I'll end up doing is, after I duplicated the mesh, is just deleting everything but these faces. Alright, so inverse selection, and then that will be that. Then I'll take it and with quad draw just fix it up so it matches and flows better. So that's one way of approaching it. Let me just close that. Another way is using quad draw. Those of you who don't know what quad draw is it's part of the retopo tools in Maya. So you go to your modeling toolkit, quad draw, and now basically what you can do is just start modeling and creating the cap as you wish to create it, and it's fairly fast to do. Just keep things simple. Alright, and then let's say just grab that from there, and that one from there, and maybe from here, and then so on and so forth. And it's fairly fast, as you can see. Alright, so with that being said, I'm just going to delete that and get out the quad draw, and we will turn everything back on. Alright, turn that back like that. Alright, cool. So at this stage, I'm just going to lock the head so it doesn't get selected. I'm going to lock the eyeballs. My hair GEO, we can kind of hide that for now because we don't need it. Actually, let's make the head transparent so we can see the cap that are already made for this. Actually, I'm just going to soften edges. There we go. Sometimes what I do is I will subdivide it a little bit because I just want a little more points to have control. And let's delete history. Alright, now what do I need to do? I kind of need to have the first vertex of each one of these hairs kind of snap to this geometry. So to do that, it's fairly simple. All I need to do is grab all of those hairs, and there's quite a few of them, as you can see, and oh wait, prior to that we're gonna make that geometry live. Alright, so now it's live. Now I could grab these hairs. I'm gonna go down and go to select, go all the way down to first CV, and if I've done this right, it should just snap. Now you'll probably get some weird behavior, and just playing around with it a bit should make it slightly better. Alright, and then you just have to fix one or two of these, so it shouldn't take too long. There you go, that's one. And here's another one. And you will just take your time and go through this. Alright, so you're going to look for the ones that just look weird and fix them. So like this one here, like so. That one there. So you want kind of a nice flow. Sorry about the horn in the background. Alright, I'm going to stop the video here, and when we get back, I've fixed all of these and we can get into xGen itself. Alright, welcome back. In this segment we're going to look at how we're going to take these curves that we've created and make them into xGen hair, or at least the guides for the xGen hair. Now, when I took a break between each segment, these two segments, I went ahead and kind of fixed the curves and rebuilt them once again, just to get a more fairly distributed points, and then that will allow me to kind of finesse this a bit, a little more finesse here and there. Now there's a few of them that I've missed, but all in all, it's nice and clean. Alright, so what must we do now? Let me just minimize that. So what I want to do is basically at this stage just create an xGen description. Now, as I said, it's probably a good idea to save at this point, so I'm going to go and save. And this is very important because this will help xGen later. So this one's going to be version 4. Alright, so we are going to go to this little shelf, xGen shelf, and we can press this icon here, or we can, if I recall, it's under animation. There should be an xGen option. Is it under modeling? I don't remember where they put it. Generate, and you can do it through here, or you could also open the xGen tab and you'll get this layout. Alright, so we want to create a description. A description basically is the overall styling of the hair. It's going to ask for a geometry. We're going to choose the sculpt, and then we just want to give this a name, so just call this hair for now. And then the collection is basically the type of hair. So sometimes you would have like shorter hair, like dogs have this sometimes, like a shorter hair, like a tuft of hair, and then on top are a longer hair, or scraggly hair, and so on. I'm just going to call this hair collection underscore hair, and just create. So I'm just leaving it default, didn't even change anything. There are different types that we can create, but this is basically just the default settings. Alright, so under the preview tab, we are going to change a few things. Density, for now we're going to leave it, but we're going to up the density sooner than later. Mask, we are just going to leave for now. We're going to mess with that later. Then we want preview attributes. It's going to say splines and attributes. We are going to change this to guides, and you're going to see that things are going to change here. Then it's going to ask for length, so I'm just going to mess around with this. Nothing's going to happen, it's just going to disappear. For now, let's leave it as is until we change a few other little nuggets. So I'll just leave that at 1. It's going to think a bit in the background. Why? Because it's looking for guides that aren't there. So because we need to add guides, and we want to use these curves as guides, we need to tell xGen to grab these curves and make them into the guides. So to do that, we're going to go to Utility tab over here, and we got all these different utilities. The one that we are interested in is called curve to guides, and I've already run this once, but by default you'll see that the option here to delete curves is on. Please tick it off, otherwise you'll lose your curves. I'm just going to choose these guys here, apply, and you'll see that what we'll get is like these orange curves instead. I'm just going to go up here and hide these guys, and voila, we have some curves. Let's generate some hair, and there we go. Look at that. Cool. Alright, let's go to preview and back to the preview tab, and we are going to scroll down until we get to here, this area here, and what we want to do is just turn off tubes so we get like little planes. We are going to leave the length because I think the length is okay, and we are just going to dial down the thickness to about 0.02. They're pretty thin. We can add a taper to it, so let's make it pretty thin over there. We can just play around where the taper ends. Yeah, that's about right. Press normalize. Alright. Now we can up the amount of hair, so let's do that. And look at that, we've got a nice full head of hair. Cool. I'm going to stop the video at this point, and in the next segment we'll start looking at how we can add new guides, fix some more guides, and maybe create a few maps to start styling the hair a little more. Alright, so welcome back. In the previous segment we looked at how to actually create guides and have the guides style the hair. Now let's start looking at how we can create maps and add new guides to add a little more control in areas that we don't have guides or didn't create enough guides to basically have the hair behave the way we wish it to. Alright, so when we left off, we basically have these guides, and I kind of like what we have, but I think I would like to have a little more control over here and probably over here. Alright, so what we can do is just go to this icon over here, and this will allow us to add guides. So I'm going to press, and you can see the minute I add a guide, it will already add a curve where there's a curve missing. Now we can grab this icon here. This one will allow to also style those curves a little better. So let's say I have this curve, just grab up like that. Now if I deselect the curve and then have all the curves selected, then it means I actually have a little more control on how these curves go, and this lets me style the hair a little more. So I can grab, I can even straighten some of these out. So maybe come in here, start pulling this guy out a bit, so go there. Alright, so let's just generate some hair, and you can see that I'm already starting to get a little more behavior in here. Right, that. Alright, let's add a few more guides at the bottom of the head. Alright, the cool thing about these guys here, I'm just going to grab the whole bunch that I just created, and I'll show you a cool thing with the guides, is that these guys are kind of long, and what I want to do with them is shorten them so there will be like shorter hairs. That basically all I need to do is just use the scale tool, and that will do that for us. There we go. And now I can start pulling these like so. Now the cool thing is, once I kind of style them a little better, like that, that's very annoying that I'm grabbing. There we go. Just gonna grab them like that. Of course, I can change my brush to be smaller, and then I can grab smaller increments, larger increments. Alright, so let's have a look. And we get a much nicer detailing at the bottom there. Alright, that is pretty cool. Great, so we now have a very nice setup, more or less where things need to go. I probably want to add just one more guide. Let's just add one more guide in there, and probably I would like to move it just so. There we go. That's better. Alright. Now that we added the guide, I got a parting in the hair here that I want to control. To do that, we need to basically paint a map in an area where we create regions. So we can create like regions of hair that each region basically will be kind of parting away or going in a certain direction. To do that, we're going to go down to the region control, and where it says a region map, we're just going to press the little arrow over here, and we say create map, and it will kind of paint it red. I'm just going to remove the color. There we go. So all I need to do now is double click on this here and get the color swatch. Let's make region blue, and I can start painting. Now basically I want this whole section here, alright, the whole blue section to be one region, all the way to that point there. That's a region. And let's create another color just so there's another region. Then let's say this whole section here is another region. And everything that's red is basically the hair coming back towards us. Like that. I've created regional areas. Alright. All I need to do is press save, and that's now created the regions. I can get out of the tool, and you'll see that technically I'm now getting like a path. You can see that these guys are kind of going in different directions. Some of them are going up, some of them are going down. That's pretty cool. Alright, I think I'm gonna stop the video here. I'm gonna tweak some of these curves, maybe add a few more guides, and then when we come back, we'll look at actually adding some clumping and some more effects onto this to make the hair look more realistic. Alright, so just as I finished that segment, I realized that I forgot to show you something really important. So we finished painting those maps, but you can see that nothing really has been applied. I mean, I've drawn out everything, but it hasn't created that massive path that I wanted. So the reason is where we entered in the map, we didn't tell the map how much value it's going to take. So if I put this up to 1, you'll see now I get that very harsh path that I wanted. Now I need to go in and clean it up. But we could also, you know, dial it down by half, and you'll get a little less harsh path there. I'm going to actually leave this up at 1, and when we get back, we'll deal with some other issues with this. So, with that being said, I'll meet you in the next video. Okay, so before we wrap up this video, I'm going to go and show you a few little tricks to kind of make this look a little better. Getting the hair to basically look a little more realistic, not as straight and clean. After that, we'll look at how to render with RenderMan. When I started this video series, it was still RenderMan 21. Now we're in RenderMan 22, so a lot of the technical issues that I had there are no longer a problem. So we're just going to skip it and see how we can get RenderMan 22 to render the cell. Anyway, with that being said, let's just jump into it and make this hairstyle look a little more natural. Okay, so what we want to do is add something called a modifier. So a modifier, what it will do is basically create all kind of modifications to this very, very straight hair. Because most hair isn't like this. It's not just like thin strands. Very few people have this kind of hair. So, and most hair clumps up into different clumps. It's just the natural way of how hair behaves due to oil, dirt, dampening, curling, all of that stuff. It creates kind of groupings of hair. So to do that, it's fairly simple. You're going to go to the modifier tab over here, and you're just going to press plus here and start off by adding a clump. So what that will do, it's going to clump the hairs, and you see now we have groups of hairs, and they are kind of mimicking this graph on the side here. So let's look at what we got. So if we look at what's happened here, we have mask strength. So if I get rid of that, I'll make it by half. It will just half the mask. It will make it less strong. Then we have the clumps. So it says 1 clump. So I can say half that. Again, we'll open it or duplicate it. Twice the amount. So it's what it's going to do is just like create kind of a texture. So it's going to be half and half. 1 is fine. You can just leave it at that. Alright. Then we have like, we can add some effects and so on. But mainly what you want to do is play around with this graph and create a little nicer looking clump. So we don't want this too clumped up. We just want them to break up into groups around our guide curves like so. And then what we want to do is probably just break up the shape a bit. So I'm just going to add a little bit of bumpiness into it, really light, so it's not as apparently, there we go, so it's not totally straight. And again, you should get some reference for this. I'm just playing around now, see what I can get. I'm actually going to make the base even wider so that I have that. Alright, now it's always a good idea to have more than 1 clump, so let's do that. Let's add another clump. Go to clumping, press OK. And what it's going to do is going to add a clumping on top of that clumping. So what's kind of cool is that you can now see that I'm getting even more breakup in the shape. So now what I can do is play around with this clumping group, and let's say clumping value at 0.2. Let's see what that does. So you're going to get a little more wiggle in it. Let's open these clumps up. Can't do that. So what I'm doing is I'm starting to break up the shape of my clumps, so they're not as uniform. See, like that. We're getting much nicer value. Let's add another clump, just a third one, and go, okay, so that's gonna even break this up even more, at least it should. Let's see what we can do. Clump effects. Copy. Nope. Again, we can start messing around with it. See how we're getting like a little separation in here now. Alright. So let's say I'm happy with this, because now I'm getting a little more individual hairs. Again, you can go and play around with how much of this behavior works for you. Oops. Come on, go away. Well, let's say we're happy. Now let's break up the length. Everything's a little too even, so we can now go to a cut and add that in. So this is now asking us, how to randomize. So it says randomize between a 0 and a 0.2. So let's make this 0. Something around about, let's say 15 here. So now we get a little bit more breakup, you see, and not all the hairs are the same length. So we're getting a little more interesting look to that. I'm actually going to hide my guide curves just so we get a better look at what's happening. And I'm going to go over here and hide the sculpt and bring back, no, we don't want that. Let's bring back this guy and bring back that guy. There we go. So we're getting something that looks a lot nicer. Let's add some ambient occlusion in there. Alright. Now we can bring up the amount of hairs in the scene, but before I do that, let's just go ahead and add a little more detail, and then we'll pretty much be done with this, because there are much better tutorials on how to make this look real. Alright, let's add a little bit of a curl and straggle to this, and we'll pretty much be over. So let's add some noise, and if we get something like this, it's a little too noisy, so we're just gonna pull that down. And yeah, that looks pretty nifty. Of course, you can go and play with the frequency. Let's say 5, and magnitude, which is, the frequency is how many waves there are, and magnitudes is how strong the waves are. So let's say I make this 5, it's gonna have like really strong. If I make it, like 0.05, it's gonna be really light changes in the hair. And then I could go back to the clumps and work on it. You could even go and paint some of the clumps, like some of the settings, so it doesn't look so weird. So now we're gonna go back to the preview, and I'm just gonna make this 200. And we're going to get a lot more hair in there. And yeah. And I think what I'm going to do is, let's see. So just one more thing, and then I'll be done with this video, and then we'll look at rendering. Alright, curl. So curl's added some curling into this. I'm going to dial it down quite a bit. So there's just a little bit of breakup in it. We can also just dial the curling quite a lot down, and let's make it by half. So again, we want just a little of it. There you go. All right. Again, this is not really good. This takes a lot more time and a lot more patience. I'm really showing you the basics, like where you go to do this. If you want to make this look really good, you need to take the time and look at some reference and play around with a lot of these settings to get, you know, something that looks a little better with its behavior, right? There you go. We're getting something a little fuller now. All right. So with that, I'm going to stop this video. In the next one, we're going to look at some RenderMan rendering, and then we'll get back to this. Okay, so at this last bit of the video, I'm just going to go over a little bit of RenderMan 22 and how to kind of assign shaders and just make it look nice. I won't be getting into like all the nitty-gritty things in RenderMan. If you want to know about that, I'll be happy to make a specific tutorial. This is more about how to shade your hair in RenderMan, so, or any renderers for that fact. It could be Arnold or Mental Ray or Redshift. This is just how you would go about it. So with that being said, let's just jump into it. So here's my final go with this, and this is, you know, I'm happy with it. It looks nice, you know. I now want to render it out. So first thing I need to do, because it's RenderMan, I'm just going to assign the head itself. I'm just going to assign just a RenderMan shader. So I'm going to go to the RenderMan 22 shelf, go to this little icon here, and I'll just assign a RenderMan shader. It's pretty much straightforward here. Now we need to assign some sort of hair shader to the head. RenderMan comes with its own shader, which is very good for it, and specifically for hair. So let's do that. To assign a shader to hair, what we're going to do is two things. One, we are going to go here in the preview tab, and we're going to go down over here, and where it says a renderer, which is over here, we are going to choose RenderMan. That's important because it's going to kind of override anything else that might be in the background. Then we can choose like a default shader, which is going to apply that shader anyway. But in this case, I also want to kind of force feed it shader. So I'm going to click on my collection up here, and then right click over the icon with the little star, and we're going to go to Pixar hair shader over there, and you'll see it will turn gray automatically. So now all I need to do is add some lights. So I already added 3-point light setup, and I've also brought in my own light. I'm just going to unhide those. How to do that, I'll be glad to show you guys in a separate video, but all in all, let me just pull out here. I think I'm just gonna scale this up a bit. Let's do that. Let's just scale. Let's say by 2, I would say. There you go. So that should be further away. Cool. Now let's render. So I can press this little R button here, or the IPR. Let's just do the R, and then we get a viewport render. That's probably what we want to see. This is why we want to use renderer 22. This will take a little bit. Here we go, and we get an immediate result that is looking pretty nice just right out the bat. Of course, there's more work to be done, and you can make this a lot nicer, especially here around the ears. But as you can see, we're getting really nice results. I hardly did anything. We can go into our shader attributes over here, and I'll choose the shader I just assigned. I'm just going to drag that off screen and go to the attribute editor on this side. It should update in a sec. Alright, so basically what you care about is We want the default color, so the default color would be, let's say he's blonde, so we can like, take it to like a yellowish hue. But you won't see that. That's like the overall color. If you want to start seeing like the actual color, that's gonna come into the secondary bounce over here. So if I do that, you'll see now we're getting a little more of that yellow in there. We can use some more of that yellow. Let's just take it to more of the reddish browns. And you can see that things are starting to change in its behavior. You can, let's see, I gotta remember, it's been a while. We can just up this color over here, the gain of the diffuse. Let's make that 0.5, and voila, we got a mustard colored hair guy. Let's make this a little nicer. A little like that. Anyway, and with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope this was helpful. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below, and subscribe. It's always good fun to have you guys join. Laters.